Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Art Aiello, Managing Editor of Farm Equipment Magazine. Welcome to our latest webinar, Leveraging Barcoding in Your Dealership, in conjunction with e-Emphasis. Today's presenter is Brian Lewis, Senior Sales Account Manager for IntelliDealer and e-Emphasis. Since 1988, Brian has worked closely with dealers utilizing IntelliDealer. Throughout the years, he's worked with a significant portion of the installed dealer population using IntelliDealer and related software and hardware. He gets great satisfaction from witnessing dealers leverage the IntelliDealer technology to improve profitability and efficiencies across various aspects of their dealership operations. Before he gets started with the presentation, I have a couple of housekeeping items. On your screen, there is a control panel with a Q&A icon. You can submit questions here at any time during the presentation, and time permitting, we will work to answer as many questions as possible following the presentation. This webinar is also being recorded and will be shared with everyone who registered in the event you want to rewatch it later. Okay, we are ready to get started. Thanks again for joining us. Take it away, Brian.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar today about leveraging barcoding technology. I want to welcome you all from various spots you're coming from. And we'd like to, I think once we get started, we'd like to sort of get an idea kind of what dealership departments that you're each from. I think, Art, you may have a poll you might want to put up if that's possible to get started. And if you wouldn't all mind just sort of answering which department you're from, and that would help us just to kind of tailor a bit what we're going to discuss today. Any answers you could provide there would be great.
And I'll give everyone about, we'll give about another 30 seconds for everyone to answer that poll. Okay, everyone should be able to see the results now. Brian, can you see those results as well?
Yeah, sounds great. So yeah, it looks like a substantial amount in parts and some in service and some other, and nobody from equipment sales. Okay, so that's great. Thanks all for participating. So I'd like to talk a bit about, so what are barcodes really? And I use the barcode symbol on purpose there because it's really about coding what it's all about. So barcodes are really just a representation of data. So it's a visual coding that represents some type of machine readable code, which turns into being, one-dimensional, two-dimensional. There's a variety of barcode styles that are out there and mechanisms, including QR codes, and which various devices can scan the different barcodes. So that's really what it's all about, is about encoding machine readable data that you can use in the technology. I want to talk a bit about the components that are part of a barcoding solution for your dealership. And some of the components obviously are the device or the gun that's going to scan the barcodes into a system. So I'm showing a couple of Zebra models here that are latest technology from Zebra, very ruggedized, heavy-duty barcode guns that are drop resistant. They have connectivity methods such as cellular, LTE, 5G, 4G, and Wi-Fi connectivity. So a number of ways to connect the guns to your system to be able to scan barcodes for various purposes. The latest ones we're working with are Android-based devices. So Android is the operating system underneath of the device, which gives it a good flexibility, which I'll talk a bit about later as well. Along with the Wi-Fi and cellular guns that are there to scan barcodes, you can also have hardwired guns that are USB attached to local PCs and laptops that enable you for a stationary solution that you may have at a parts counter, that kind of thing. Then you're going to have the barcode label printer, which is a very ruggedized, again, Zebra, which Zebra is a very standard name out there in the barcode space. And it produces very reliable, resilient, durable barcode labels that you can affix to various components, including your parts bins, parts packaging themselves, and equipment, in fact. So the label printer. And when you put all of those components together, you're ending up with all of this together. So you may have, again, at the parts counter, you may have a hardwired gun. You're going to have these Wi-Fi and cellular devices out roaming around your dealerships and in the yards. And you're going to have the printer sitting in the dealership, typically in a common space that you can access the labels easily. And again, the hardwired gun is going to be attached to a local PC that typically sits at a station at the parts counter and enables you to quickly get through scanning barcode labels. And you can also see an example of the labels themselves up here, which I'll get into a little bit later. At the top, you can see a parts label. And in the middle, you can see an example of an equipment label. And there's also customer labels, which print basic mailing label addressing for sending various things out. So the printer itself can be used to print any and all of those types of labels throughout the system. You may even not have the latest and greatest in hardware, but chances are that the dealership has someone with a personal smartphone, iPhone, Android. That's very common out there. So what some dealerships will do is have a Bluetooth tetherable scanner device that can similarly scan barcode labels. So that's an alternative to having the latest and greatest heavy-duty Zebra scanners out there, as you can actually have alternatives for scanning barcodes as well. So there's a number of ways that you can have access to the barcode scanning equipment itself. The labels themselves, there's a number of labels out there. We've got a certain size defined of a label that we have standardized upon. And the labels themselves, these Zebra polyester labels, are a thermal-based label, and they're very, again, resilient to weather conditions, resilient to tearing. They're very difficult to tear. And so they last, are very durable in the environments that you're going to put them in, which includes parts and equipment itself. A closer example of the parts and equipment labels on the parts left-hand side, you can see an example where it shows the part number, a description of the part, a branch location of the part, the price if you choose to use it for a pricing label is a handy thing, and the barcode itself, of course, and the parts label. On the equipment label, similarly, you've got a make and a stock number, you've got a model number, serial number, description, and a branch location along with the barcode. So these are, at a visual glance, you can easily see what the unit that you're looking at represents and make sure you've got the right label on the right unit itself. When the system goes to print labels at various spots throughout the process, on the left-hand side, you can see at the bottom your parts label printing report option comes up and asks you, is this a part label? Is it a bin location label? You can have one or the other. And do you want to print a label for each quantity? In other words, if you have 20 of this item, do you want to print 20 labels, or do you just want to print one label for the whole set of parts that you have? On the label itself, you may or may not want to print the barcode, the part number, the description, the price, the bin location. So these are all selectable with a checkbox. And then you, of course, choose the printer you want to print the label on. Similar with the equipment labels, you can, when you go to print equipment labels, you may want to choose to print only inventory units or only rental units or only sold units. You can choose what status of the machine itself it is that you want to narrow the filter on to print a label for. And then on the label itself, you can similarly choose, do I want to print the stock number, the barcode, the make, model, the serial number, description, group, and location. So you have choices yes or no on any of those fields as you go to print labels for the equipment itself. And then again, you choose the printer that you want to print the label on. And the result is you get the actual labels printed off ready to affix to the various items that you're going to attach the labels to. So talking about the parts inventory, and you're going to wonder why you see strawberries in an avocado, it's really no different than on the barcode that you have at the grocery store. Really, the point of having a barcode at the grocery store is obviously to get in and out of the grocery store quickly, get to the checkout, wave the unit, the item against the barcode reader, and get your price and check out and leave the grocery store with your groceries intact. So really the concept of grocery store barcode labeling is very similar to a heavy equipment dealership, the difference being the parts are probably more costly than an avocado would be. So in the dealership itself at the parts department, you may have a showroom, and the showroom is going to have various items that are displayed here. And this gives you a good example of why you might want to use it as a price labeling system, because you can actually have these items in your showroom that make it very accessible for the customers to look at what they're looking at, make sure it is what they think it is. They can easily grab that component, bring it up to the parts counter, and your parts staff can very easily check them out, similar to the grocery store, where they get in and out of the dealership quickly with the items that they need, knowing that they picked the right item with the right price and that your parts staff can easily get them in and out of the dealership in a fairly quick order. As a whole, really, what does the parts barcoding system, what does it do for you as a whole? So as a whole, it allows you to print labels. It allows you to do cycle counts and or annual inventory counts. So you obviously need to count your inventory to make sure it's accurate. It enables you to do that. It allows parts order receipting. It allows you to do pick list creation. So if you want to walk through the warehouse and I want one of these, I want 3 of these, I want 4 of these, you can very quickly build a pick list that makes it easy for checkout at the front counter when you get back. It allows you to do a quick check. You're trying to identify an item. It allows you to do a shop parts return very easily. It allows you to do a parts order picking when you've ordered it from your supplier. It's come in, you're ready to pick it and ship it to the customer or get it ready for will call. It allows you to easily do that. And if you're ever reorganizing your warehouse, moving things from one place to the other to reorganize and get it a little more tidy and able to find things, it makes it very easy to help you to physically move the items as you move things and not lose track of where you put them at. And as shown earlier, it allows you to do point of sale transactions as you check them out, and you can do showroom price tagging as I illustrated earlier. So these are really in total what the components of the solution are going to allow you to do. Walking through some of the detail. So as mentioned earlier, a parts count, you may want to do a spot check. You may want to do a sequential count. You may want to do a count number. In the system itself, in IntelliDealer, you're able to have a count system which lets you decide which batch of parts you want to choose as that count. You may have a count for bins A through B, then another count for bins C through D, or any organization way that you want to have it set up a count number. And the system will then let you go in and use the barcode gun to do that count number itself. And I see, Art, we may have a Q&A question here.
We do. Do you want to wait until the end of your presentation to jump back to that?
Yeah, why don't we do that? We can circle back to any of these slides as well as we go through. So Todd, I'll get back to your question there as we go through. All right, so the parts counting system itself, sequential counting is another example that you might want to do. You might want to, do the whole parts warehouse from A to Z in bin sequence, because obviously you can only walk so many spaces at one time efficiently to get the count done. So a sequential count would allow you to do it in a very organized A to Z manner from left to right as you walk across the warehouse. And you may have an item that you just came across, you don't really know what it is. You can do a spot check and just do a quick sort of scan of the barcode to see what is this thing, and it brings up some detail. On the inventory counts itself, as I mentioned earlier, there's a full count and a cycle count are really your two main choices. So a full count is going to be typically at a year end where you're going to take an entire inventory count of your entire dealership, parts inventory, for example. So you're going to set up that full count. But cycle counts are saying every so often I want to choose a chunk of my parts inventory and I want to count this many of those parts. And you're going to choose a date and you're going to choose every iteration number of months that you're going to want to do that cycle count. So the system allows you to set up those iterations and those inventory counts and cycle counts on a cadence that makes sense for your dealership. And then you get it in the system, and it makes it very easy to, as time goes by, grab the inventory gun and then spread out that task of taking those inventory counts over time to do it in a more manageable way. Because the reality is your parts people are generally having, some quiet time during different times. They're going to be super busy during harvest and planting. But for other times of the year, you're going to have quiet times where it's going to be easier to do little batches of counts as you go through. So this allows you to divide and conquer and allow the counts to take place when your people have the time to do the counts with the handheld guns. Parts receipting is another function that the barcoding system allows you to really take advantage of more effectively. So when I have a parts order out there that's come in, I got a pallet that hit the floor, I have a bunch of parts in front of me, I have to figure out what just arrived from the supplier. You would want to receipt that parts order. And there's really two choices. You can receipt a single location order or a consolidated order. The consolidated order might be a hub and spoke dealership where you've got a central warehouse and you have 5 outlying stores. You may have done a consolidated order that brought the whole order into your dealership, and you're going to then disperse it out to the various stores. That would be known as a consolidated order. A single location order just means my branch here ordered these parts. They came in from the supplier, and my branch wants to receipt that branch's order of parts that came in from the supplier. So that would be a single location order. So it's really just a matter of grabbing the gun, walking up and saying, okay, I'm going to receipt this PO from this vendor. And I may or may not want to print labels when it came in, because I can use the labels that came on the parts packaging from the OEM, or I can print my own labels, or a combination of both. So you may want to do it either way. And then you can proceed to simply hit next, next, next as you go through and scan each physical item that comes off of the pallet as you're physically receipted in. And as you get to the end of the pallet, the premise there is that you're obviously have counted the entire pallet, and then you're going to go put the parts away physically in the bin. Or you could also, similarly, as you take an item off the pallet, walk it over, put it in the bin, and walk back and forth. It depends on the amount of exercise you want to get for that day. There's either way to do it. And as you go through, you'll notice on the right-hand side, as I go through and hit the next button each time, it shows me the last one that I did, because anybody who works at a dealership knows the phone is ringing constantly and you're going to get interrupted. And this allows you to come back to the screen and show you where you left off at, so that you remember how far you got through that pallet of parts receipting that you wanted to finish. And it lets you know the last one, so you can continue on and carry through the rest of it. And you'll notice at the bottom, there's an enter will call shelf option, which says if you're receiving parts, for example, that for a customer order that came in, you're going to want to know where you put that item. The customer is going to come in later that day to pick it up. This allows you to put which shelf you actually put it on, so that when you pull it up in the system, you're going to see where to actually find that thing for the customer. If you have a large warehouse, that it's difficult to find things, but typically a dealership will have one large will call shelf for everything that's going to be picked up that day. But it allows you the flexibility to have that. There's also a picking list function. The picking list function is kind of a, I want one of these, I want one of these, one of these. It's kind of like the grocery store thing where you walked through the warehouse and you said, I need this basket of things, but I want to make it easy to check out when I get back to the front. So this lets you actually take the gun kind of with a basket, walk through the warehouse, and one of these, one of these, one of these, you're going to scan each one as it goes through, put it in the basket. When you get up to the front counter, though, you're going to get ready to check it out. You're going to want an easy way to transition that pick list into a ticket to charge out to the customer, obviously, to get them out the door quickly. So this allows you to do that pick list with the gun and very quickly pull that pick list into the ticket at the front counter when you're completed the picking list and ready to check out that customer efficiently. So the picking list enables you to do that. And you can save the list if you have a really big list that you want to gather and later pull that big list into the system. You can save the list under a certain name, and the name that you gave it, and then you bring that list that you named back into the system to very easily check that customer out at the point of sale. I mentioned earlier a quick check. This is where I don't know what this item is I'm looking at, want to make sure it's the right thing. It allows you to scan the barcode And when you scan the barcode, you'll see on the right-hand side, it shows you, oh, this is an oil filter. Here's the bin it should be in, the list cell cost, on-hand quantity, on order. So it gives you some detail for that item that you found that maybe been laying on the floor. It fell out of the bin or something. You just didn't identify what it was, but the scanner very quickly gets you back in line of what that thing is, and then it'll let you verify the quantity and then put it back where you found it or where it should go back in the bin. So any quick check you can do very easily. Stock movements I mentioned earlier, you may want to reorganize your warehouse. You typically want to have obviously your highest moving parts towards the front of near the counter, because then it's a logistical improvement of not having to walk back to the back warehouse every time you have a high moving item. You want to turn around, grab it quick, get it to the customer, and let the customer check out quickly. The stock movement allows you to take the barcode gun and walk through and really just move things literally from one place to the other. And you'll see on the bottom right-hand side where you can say, okay, what new bin am I putting it in? And it kind of shows you what the old bin is. And it says, hey, do you want to remove the old bin? Yes or no? And then add the new bin. So it just tells you it went from one bin to the other, and it automatically updates the system with the appropriate bin location as you physically move the parts from one place to the other. So it really gives, again, the freedom of mobility for your parts staff to open up and have that ability to very efficiently move these items to make your warehouse more tidy and organized. But it also, as you're doing it, it doesn't lose track of where things went to. And at a moment's notice, you can pull up an item you did 5 minutes ago, and you're going to see that it's in the new bin that you stipulated. So it really gives you that freedom to do that. We've also got an order picking and a shop parts return function. The shop parts return is kind of an interesting one, because some of the human errors that are taking place when you are just keying in freestyle the quantities of an item, you may make a mistake and type in 100 instead of 10 or 10 instead of 1. Those type of errors are caught with the sharp parts return function, because it only ever lets you return to a maximum quantity of the work order parts quantity that you ever built to the work order in the first place. So it catches that human error where you might have typed in the 100 instead of 10 by mistake. It doesn't allow you to do that. So it really limits you to whatever was posted to the work order originally. So it's a very good way to catch that human error aspect on a shop parts return. And again, physical order picking, this means, am I shipping out the items for that customer's order that I originally ordered for him, or did I put an extra one in the box? It lets you double check at the back end when you're packing up a box to ship out to the customer to make sure you only put in the items that the customer actually ordered and nothing more, nothing less. So it just gives you an accuracy check at the back end of filling the box to ship out for the order. And on the order picking itself, as you can see on the left-hand side example screen here, what items are outstanding and received for this order, and how many have I picked and how many have I verified. So it lets you pick them from the pallet that came in from the supplier, and then it lets you verify that you put them in the box for the customer to be sent out. And you could actually do a split shipment where some, you see in the example here, some went UPS and some went FedEx. You can actually split it out on the outbound packing to say different carriers took different items within that original order, because the customer may need a part overnight for one thing, but the other ones can go UPS ground or something. So you can split the shipment method for different items on the original order. So it gives you a very quick way to make sure you put the right ones in the box that went out to that customer. And Art, we might pause here. We've got a few Q&As popping up here.
We do, yes. We do. You want me to just kind of go through them for you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we have one. How would the application help with parts order picking?
Yeah, and hopefully I just caught up to that question here with the picking. This actual screen that we're on right here shows the picking, but it literally lets you pick from the items that were originally ordered and verify that you in fact pick the right ones on the back end. The question may also be, how do I pick an order, like I mentioned earlier with the grocery store example where you walk through the warehouse and pick them. I went through that question, so hopefully that took care of that question for Todd.
And then Todd has a second question. Do you have barcode to part number from vendors, or is that something we need to ask our vendors for?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, most OEMs have barcode labels that go on the packaging, not all, but most. And typically those ones that go on the packaging, those are readable into the system. And typically the barcode on the manufacturer's part represents the part number. So as long as the part number in your system matches the part number that the barcode represents from the manufacturer, it should work immediately. And if it doesn't, you can always set up a cross-reference that says the OEM barcodes it this way, and the system translates it to a cross-reference or to a UPC code, for example, and it recognizes it that way in your system. So it really is dependent on how your part numbering is set up in the system compared to how the barcode represents on the barcode label from the manufacturer itself. But there are a number of flexible ways to handle that situation.
We have a question from Darren. How do you utilize the OEM barcode at receiving?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the barcode label from the manufacturer, again, typically represents the part number is the barcode. So if they're one and the same, it'll immediately recognize that in your system because you will have had that part number in your system, that when you scan the manufacturer's label on the parts packaging, it's going to recognize, oh, you've got that as this part number in your system, and it should find a matchup between the two and enable you to receive that OEM part number into your system immediately.
And Todd has a follow-up question. When you've put a will call shelf in on a receiving file, where is that location posted in the order?
That really says the bin location on that order stores that will call shelf in when you go to pull up that customer's original ticket that he ordered it on, it's going to show where to find those parts. So the idea is if anybody, like let's say somebody goes to lunch and the other guy needs to go find it, they're going to be able to pull that ticket up and it's going to show the will call bin that when you receipted that item, where you stored it at, so that the other person can go find it easily. And that's the whole idea of putting that will call shelf when you receipt it, is so that anybody using the system can then tell where to find that item at.
And Darren had a follow-up question, and forgive me because it has to do with your last answer. He is asking, what if it does not? And I'm not sure quite what that is in reference to. Darren, if you have an opportunity to type in just a follow-up that provides a little more context, I'll make sure that gets answered.
Yeah, I believe it may be about.
I'm sorry. He just followed up the OEM barcode.
Right. Yeah. So if it doesn't recognize the OEM barcode, I mean, you basically have to somehow identify what that thing is. So if you have no record of what you scanned from the OEM barcode label in your system, yeah, it's going to be a challenge to figure out what that thing is. Hopefully that you've got some way. But I mean, if something showed up, typically it's going to be showed up because you had an order for that item. So it's a matter of matching those two up. So that would be a challenge if it's unrecognizable from the OEM barcode, but we've not really seen that problem widely because most of the OEM part numbers, majority of the dealers have the price tapes loaded for the various vendors, so it will recognize that item from the manufacturer if it's on their price list. So it usually isn't a big problem. So.
And those are all the questions we have so far. So thank you to the attendees who are asking those questions. Please feel free to weigh in with other questions, and we will get to those later on in the presentation.
Yeah, I think Todd might have one more here as well.
Oh, yes, I see that. I apologize. Let's see here. Comments or what space? I just want to know what field the will call shelf is posted in.
Yeah, it'll be in a bin field because the will call shelf is basically saying where is this item. So it'll be on a bin, one of the bin location fields in the system, so that because you're going to go look in that bin for that item, so that's where it's going to show as the bin location.
We have one more that just came in. Can you scan with a mobile phone instead of a scanner if you have the eService Plus app?
I'm not quite sure what the eService Plus app is, but the mobile phone I mentioned earlier, some dealers have a Bluetooth tethered barcode scanning, like a handheld device. You can tether it to an iPhone or an Android, and that enables you to scan with those two types of devices. And I'm not quite sure what the eService Plus app is. If you have any more information on that, Meredith, that would be helpful to maybe clarify the eService Plus. And I can move on for now. We can circle back to some questions if some more come up. So I left off at the order picking section. So this is, again, packaging the parts order up for the customer to make sure what he originally ordered is actually physically going in the box and being shipped out to him or ready for will call. And then you make sure that for accuracy's sake that the customer's items that they're desiring are going to end up in the box and on the way to that customer. So that's what the picking function is about. And I also wanted to add, so the technology, as I mentioned earlier, the barcoding gun technology can be used both for parts and equipment. And I wanted to talk a bit about the equipment side of the equation here. We didn't have a whole lot of attendees on the equipment side. And so if you want to add any more questions in, we'll get back to some more questions. I'll just go over this very briefly. We have ID Mobile Access as part of our mobile app for IntelliDealer, and it's, again, available for Apple or Android devices, and so tablets, smartphones, that type of thing. And there's a number of functions you can do in the ID Mobile Access, some of them which are highlighted here, the equipment inventory management. So inventory management means I want to keep track of what equipment items I have out there. And again, you're using the same type of hardware that's accessible for the solution, so it's good you can share it between parts and service. And again, an equipment label shown in the top left there, you're going to have, again, barcode, make, stock number, model number, serial number, description, branch location. But you can also have, as I shown illustration here, the OEMs are going to have their own labels on them as well. So you can use the OEM's label. If it recognizes the serial number, it's going to find a match to the serial number in your system, but you may want to put your own labels on over and above. But the idea here is that, some recognizable barcode is going to be scannable, that you're going to be able to actually keep track of what you're scanning in the barcode gun. So there's all kinds of examples of how barcodes are established from the manufacturers here. So doing an inventory count in the ID Mobile Access app, it really is as simple as walking the yard or walking the showroom with your equipment and simply scanning the barcode label. And all you do is you click the checkbox as shown in the bottom right corner there. And it really is that simple to count your inventory. I got one of these, I got one of these, I got 3 of these. You're literally hitting the checkbox. And by hitting that checkbox, what it does is it actually updates the fact of who counted that and the date that they counted it, and that it counted that last inventory. So you can then do an audit later to say, what units do I show in inventory that I've not counted in the last 30 days or 90 days kind of thing. So it gives you an ability to stay on top of doing yard counts on a fairly frequent basis to make sure you're on top of what's in stock and what's in the yard and showroom. And here just shows an illustration of, so that on the equipment profile, it's going to update the date counted field and the method counted and who counted it. It's actually going to record whose name physically counted it, so you can track back to who the person responsible for showing that was in inventory. So it gives you a good audit trail for that type of a thing. Here's some detail on the various methods. There's several coding that takes place when you go to count your yard inventory. How did they count it? Did they use the wireless handheld? Was it a traffic ticket? So there's a number of ways that machine movements happen in the system. And based on how you counted that piece of equipment, it's going to code it in the system. And you can, when you look back, you're going to see how it was counted, who it was counted by. So again, there's going to be accountability and a breadcrumb trail back to the person that you can ask questions if there's any clarification needed on the last time you counted a particular machine. So when I go to scan a barcode label, I'm standing in front of the machine. I simply scan the label. I pull up the unit and finds the right unit, and it allows me to get into the equipment details. So on your mobile app, in a very quick barcode scan, click, you're pulling up the detail of that machine. So it makes it a very handy way to kind of identify what you're looking at, see what the details are on that machine are, and pulls up some cost information and some various other detail. And you can actually hit the pencil icon on the screen, and the pencil icon lets you edit the unit. When you edit the unit, it lets you update the location or branch, the yard location, the in-out subtype, so the the movement of the machine in or out and why it moved in or out, the hour meter reading, the hour 2 meter reading, and the model year correction if there's one to be made. So it gives you a very quick and dirty kind of way to edit that equipment. If there is something mistyped in there, you can correct it very easily on the handheld as you walk throughout the yard. Other things you can also do when you're scanning the barcode against the machine is you can update the machine hours, and you can add multimedia. So multimedia means, hey, you may want to take a photo of the serial number tag, the hour meter gauge itself, or any damage that might be on the unit, or just a nice photo of the machine. So you can take a live photo, or you can take a bunch of photos and then update it from your photo gallery on either iPhone or Android, and you can pull that right into the equipment profile itself by just hitting add to multimedia. So that green plus sign in the bottom right corner is what you would click to add photos to this equipment profile. So it just gives you a good document trail of photographs that are tied to that machine. Very convenient. Again, it also lets you update the machine hours 1 and hours 2. So you've got 2 hours fields that you might want to update, and that's a very good idea, obviously, to keep on top of the hour meter reading as often as you can. So if you want to do that on a regular basis, it's a very quick way to go in and do that with the mobile app. And another function that's used is adding attachments. You're probably, a lot of dealerships are constantly adding and removing attachments to machines out in the yard for various purposes. So this lets you very easily add or remove an attachment to a main machine. So you may add a bucket, a lawnmower deck, those kind of things. Whatever attachments you need to add or remove, it makes you a very easy way to scan the barcode label, add an attachment, remove an attachment as is appropriate. And that very easily keeps track of these little attachments that tend to get misplaced and you can't find throughout the yard. So this gives you a very easy way to avoid that situation where you can't find the attachments. So in summary, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to use this technology? There's a cost to human error. I mean, it's really about time efficiency, loss with the employees. You want your employees to be efficiently be able to do their job with the technology. You can lose reputation from customers because if it takes forever to get a customer in and out the dealership with a transaction, your customer service levels, satisfaction levels are going to be lowered because the customers don't like to wait because they're busy and they have things to do. Inaccuracies, you're going to be missing customer expectations if they call in, see if you have something in stock and your system shows you have 3, but you didn't walk back to check the on-hand level and you in fact don't have any left. It's going to lead to frustrated customers, and this helps you to avoid that. And financial write-offs for the dealership. Obviously, if things go missing, you then got to take a financial hit for that. And the more often you can do inventory counts and stay on top of it, the less you're going to get a big surprise at the fiscal year end when you have to write off potentially a large write-off for the dealership. And again, just misplace the items, can't find them. You want to keep your employees satisfied, keep them, making their job a little easier for them. That's always a good thing. And then, you don't want to lose customers over poor service. So these are all the reasons you kind of want to leverage this technology with barcodes to make, everybody's life easier, make the customers happy, make your employees happier, less human error and less, financial write-offs is really what it's about. And I have a funny little diagram with an abacus and account sheet, which is the old way to do it. And we want you to use the newer technology with leveraging barcodes for that type of thing. And that is pretty much the conclusion. I think we may have had a couple, I have a couple other benefits here. Yeah, so accuracy of inventory counts, reduced human error, your productivity and effectiveness of your staff. You want them to be productive, you want them to be effective, and you want ease of doing business for your customers and, serving them quickly and efficiently. That's always a good thing. Convenience for everybody involved, and then being prepared for equipment inventory yard audit counts. You want to be prepared for that. So these are really as a summation, kind of the reasons that you're going to want to be doing these types of technologies in your dealership. And sorry, Art, there might have been a couple of remaining questions that we can circle back to here as well.
Yes, Meredith provided some additional context. What she was referring to was e-emphasis inspection and service app for techs to remotely log info from the yard. And then as a follow-up, said that's why we're setting up the barcoding for our techs to scan in from their phones in the yards, don't want them tethered to a computer.
Okay, yeah, and this isn't for the eEmphasis ERP system. This is for the IntelliDealer system. So I may have to take that offline for that question. That may be for our other platform, the eEmphasis ERP system. So this is the IntelliDealer side of the platform. So I may have to defer those questions for Meredith on that one.
Okay. That answers all the questions we have up to this point. If you have a question, we have time. Why don't I give everybody 30 seconds or a minute to ask any additional questions before we move on?
And we have a fairly substantial footprint, I would say, of customers out here using this technology. And some of the customers are, kind of have been doing it a certain way for a long time, and they're really in the groove with doing it that way. And that's part of the hump to get over of, do I want to embrace some of this new technology? The hardware itself is kind of expensive, but it's, again, very, very ruggedized equipment. And, the efficiencies gained is some of the things you want to look at is just, how can I really get the most efficiency and accuracy from the investment that you've got, because you're already investing in people's time it takes to do things manually. So this is really just a shift in making a shift to technology to basically make the whole effort a more efficient and accurate effort in it all. So that's really the hump to get over is just a change from what you're doing it sort of the old way on paper, and it is a bit of a transition, but we've had a number of dealerships go that way, and they've really benefited efficiencies from that.
I'm not seeing any other questions come in. We'll wait another few seconds just to be sure. Okay, I think with that, we will wrap things up. Unless, Brian, you had any final comments before I close things out.
No, just really wanted to say I appreciate everybody's attendance today, and we're glad to help you with the technology on eEmphasis and IntelliDealer, and glad to help any dealers out there want to talk about this more. I'm glad to field any questions individually that you may have, and really appreciate your attending the session today.
Okay, just as a reminder, today's presentation and audio will be made available on the Farm Equipment website in the event you would like to go back and review it. So watch your email and the Farm Equipment newsletter for additional information. On behalf of eEmphasis and the Farm Equipment staff, thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Please feel free to reach out to me if there are any topics you'd like to see us cover in the future. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.